a lot of people nowadays see having an autism diagnosis as a bit trendy and a bit cool.
Yeah.
And so they make remarks like, oh, you're just jumping on a bandwagon.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that makes me very uncomfortable because they don't see the struggles underneath.
Welcome to today's ASPI interview. I'm here with Krishna, who is a social worker who found out she was on the spectrum later in life. So should be a fun interview today.
Good morning, Paul.
So the question I always like to start with is, what's the first thing? It's not the first thing. What is one thing that you really like about being on the spectrum yourself?
That's an amazing question because traditionally being on the spectrum has been seen as quite a deficit, and what I've seen as I've reflected over my life that being autistic has been the driving force that has kindled my passion about various things, has given me the momentum to persevere when I've started waning from something. And I take a certain, I suppose, pride in being autistic, although I don't want to negate or devalue the difficult experiences that we have.
And you've done quite a bit in your life before discovering autism. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, I think it had been bubbling for many years that I was autistic, but because I am high functioning and function well in the world and so on, no one would believe me when I talked about it. And I think being so-called successful in a social work career made that diagnosis or acknowledgement of that diagnosis quite difficult for many people. So I travelled the world in my younger years. I had successful and lovely relationships, children. I have 4 sons and a stepdaughter.
Okay.
And I think my social work career just kind of rocketed, especially since I came to Australia. So my area of expertise for many years was sudden death. So I'm an expert on how people die, how people choose to die, what that impact is on their last moments in the world. And I'm quite fascinated by that transition from life to death. That's always been something that I've felt passionate about trying to understand. And I know it's an enigma, but I still have lots of knowledge about that.
Yeah, I imagine that would be very valuable for the families and people around when that happens.
Yeah, and I think being autistic meant that I could be disconnected from taking on their personal burdens.
Okay.
But because we're very feeling people, I could also connect to the feelings that they were having and have a lot of empathy. So it actually gave me a really good balance. So I didn't go home from a difficult situation traumatized by it because I didn't take their pain with me. And I think that being autistic is what contributed to being able to do that. But it wasn't until I started working as a social worker in disabilities that I started really waking up to the possibility of being autistic. And I would go, it was an early intervention team, I'd go and work with young children, and I related to them in a way that was a little bit different than most social workers. Yeah, so I was quite, I felt I got them straight away. And I think a bit more than that was I felt that a lot of the intervention needed to be with the adults, the parents. The children just needed probably assistance and valuing who they were. But the adults needed to kind of accept that there was a different way of being a parent.
So you could bring your own insight into helping figure out what the adults needed to do to support the children.
Yeah. And by doing that, that sort of made me a little suspicious about my own approach. And that's when I started thinking quite seriously. And like I said, when I sort of went to other people, I have, good friends that are professionals in social work, psychology, and so on. I would suggest it, and they were like, "Oh no, Krishna, you can't possibly be, because you're social, because you do eye contact, because you interact well with people." But I think one and all didn't recognise the amount of effort that all of that took, as we all know.
So it's known to be quite difficult sometimes to get a diagnosis, especially later in life, especially as a woman. Yeah. How did you?
Oh, I blame Tony Attwood.
Okay.
Because I was actually driving in Queensland with my northern New South Wales, with my partner. We were on holiday, and he came on the radio and was talking about women and autism. And I'm just driving along, and my partner's reading the paper or whatever. And then I started listening more carefully, and I was thinking, this guy's walked with me my whole life. He was describing everything that I experienced at different parts of my life so accurately that I just started crying, and tears were flowing, and my partner looked up and understood straight away what was happening. And so after that, when I got back home, we discussed whether I would like to pursue it a little bit more carefully. Okay. So I decided to phone Tony Attwood up and book myself in and go to Brisbane if that's what it took. But then, when I did phone up, he was a very busy person, obviously, and they suggested someone that had trained with him, who had a practice in Sydney, which wasn't too far from me. And I went to see him. His name's Steve Dencat. Okay. And he had a lot of experiences with autism and women. And because I was out of state, we did a whole morning of interviews and discussions and so on. And at the end of it, he turned to me and he said, "What do you think?" I thought, what a silly question, because I wouldn't be here if I didn't think it, and there's no difference now than when I walked in. So I said, I'm probably on the spectrum, but because I'd listened to all the voices of everyone telling me that I was so high functioning I can't possibly be, I thought, oh gosh, maybe I'm just sort of fall in that grey area, where there's no real diagnosis, there's no real answer to all my experiences. So I thought, I was very hesitant and uncomfortable, and he said, "Oh, you're on the spectrum, you've scored significantly in all my little tests and tick boxes." And then he started explaining to me what that meant. The first thing he said was not to take this as a deficit. Okay. And my partner sat with me through all of this and took all the information in, because you know what that's like. Yeah. And then he started explaining how an autistic mind works, in that you have one thought and that doubles to two thoughts, and before you know it, from one tiny thought there's a million things going on. And if you have four thoughts at the same time, then there's 4 million going on within really quickly.
Very quickly,
like it's so fast. And I just said to him, but isn't everybody like that? Because I didn't know. And they both looked at me and started laughing. And they're like, no. So that was a very positive moment, because it was very validating. And I think having a diagnosis gave me more self-understanding and more confidence in myself and myself in the world. And it helped me recognize that some of the things that I found very difficult were not because I was stupid, not because I couldn't manage them. It was just that in my world they didn't kind of exist. The ability to do certain things just doesn't exist, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
You know, there's lots of other things I do instead. So then I went home and I sat the children down very seriously.
Yep.
Now I've got something to tell you, and you know, I'm on the autism spectrum, and this is.
How old were the kids at this stage?
Oh, they were probably in their early teens.
Early teens, okay.
So between maybe 11 and 17, something like that. And I explained a little bit about how I think it impacted on me as a parent. And I said, you know, sometimes when I've been quite strict, when I've wanted things to be in order, when I've wanted you to clean your rooms up, I've probably overacted just slightly and been a bit shouty and so on. And I now understand that my distress and anxiety about having things in order was not to do with you guys. It was to do with my need. And so we discussed it for a while, and I felt like in that moment they kind of forgave me for any way I screwed up.
Okay.
They were just really relaxed about it, and for them a lot of things fell into place as well. But in the coming weeks after that, when I'd ask them to tidy their room, that was one particular thing. They'd be like, is that autistic mum asking us or just mum?
Yeah.
But they were teasing me.
Yeah,
and now they still tease me playfully, and it's comfortable. But they also understand my journey a lot better. And they don't hold any grudges about some of the more random ways that I parent. Because also being autistic has contributed to me parenting in a style that was also quite connected to my children, so I'm quite close with them as well. And the things that they're interested in, I've developed and absorbed as well.
You mentioned an increased empathy with being on the spectrum.
Yeah. I think you know, that old idea about us not having feelings and so on is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how it is for you, but when something happens, I feel it in every cell of my body. But it doesn't necessarily appear in my face. It doesn't necessarily appear in how I react. But I'm feeling the empathy and I feel the situation. But because I kind of have this, it's not a barrier, it's a way of compartmentalizing. I can then express the empathy without all the feelings getting in the way. But I've thought a lot about expressing empathy because it's a dangerous place to go to, because if you really let all your feelings out about it as an autistic person, you'd probably blow up or something.
Yeah, I use the term empathy overload.
Yeah.
And I feel from my perspective that the compartmentalization is sort of like a coping strategy with the overload of empathy.
That's right.
So that's sort of my experience with that.
And I was thinking that sometimes I find that I attract people that need something because they know they can get that from me, and I'm not aware enough as a person to work out why people are approaching me. So I trust friendships from autistic people because I feel they're more honest.
Okay.
But when other people are making friends with me, I kind of fall in the trap over and over again because they know I can be quite sympathetic or whatever. And I get myself into a little bit of hot water sometimes with that.
So you mentioned friendships with other autistics.
Yeah.
Because I remember a little while back you said that it was like a whole new world in you.
Yeah. Yes, it is in one sense, it's a whole new world in that I've kind of found my people, and I haven't, because we never feel like we found our people. That's just who we are. But when I went to a recent conference and I was around a lot of autistic people, I felt more comfortable to be myself, whatever that is. So I was, when I was in the autistic only space, I would just feel more relaxed, and everyone was very careful about each other and caring about each other. That's what I found anyway. And it was great that people understood about, sensory problems and so on. So like they just don't walk in and put all the lights on and...
Why are you all sitting in the dark?
Yeah, that's right.
Have you ever been to an autism conference? Sometimes the autism room is like, why are all these people sitting in the corner in the dark?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm now find that I'm kind of crystallizing more as an autistic person, but it's still hard to be out in the world and help people be more comfortable with it, because if I go somewhere and I need to take time out nowadays, I can do that on my phone rather than remove myself from the space. So I can go on Facebook or something, and I'm not leaving, but so I'm present,
like
but not.
Timeout recharge for you on your phone.
Yes.
Okay.
And then people are, oh, Krishna, why are you on your phone? We're here, and all that sort of criticism. And I'm like, well,
which is kind of ironic, because the reason you're still there
is because
you want to be with them.
That's right. That's right. So I've had to kind of retrain a lot of my friends, but they're now a bit more accepting of my behaviours, and my relationship is much improved, because one of the things was that because I need order and I need things organised, and my partner is not exactly the same, although she's very well organised, there was always this kind of expectation on her part that if I was doing stuff, that she needed to be doing it too and helping and so on. And now she knows that I just need to do it for myself. It's not about cleaning or putting things away or unpacking the minute you walk in the door or whatever.
It's something you need versus something you need done.
Yeah,
it's like
that's
I'm organising because I like organising.
Yeah, and I'm doing the laundry because I love doing laundry.
Yeah.
Perverted, I know, but
Yeah.
So it has improved our relationship in that she's more patient with me. But unfortunately, the psychologist told her not to let me get away with anything just because I'm autistic. So, damn.
Right, so you can't use it as an excuse.
No, I can't use it as an excuse, but I can use it as a reason. Yeah. So it is about educating other people, and I'm finding now that we're often perceived as people that aren't successful. And I think for me, I believe I've had and still have a very successful life. And it's successful in many of the ways that neurotypical people measure success, with career and property and children and all of that sort of stuff. But it's successful in a deeper way, in that my parenting skills, I believe, have been enhanced by being autistic. My ability to be a good social worker has been enhanced by being autistic. Or not even enhanced, I couldn't do it if I wasn't autistic. Enhanced is probably
you to do it.
It's allowed me. It's the conduit in which I function in the world, and it hasn't the deficits, and there are deficits and issues with being autistic, which I don't know, sometimes we try and gloss over. But I've worked very hard for many, many years to manage them in a way that I can function in the world. And it's almost like the autism has helped me manage the autism. And it was the autism that highlighted that I was autistic. It was the little voice that was going, oh, you know what. So I believe that it is possible to harness a disability. Not always, obviously, but it is possible to harness a disability so that you conduct your life in a much more improved way. And that I think by that psychologist saying, don't see this as a deficit, I didn't have a choice but to see it in a positive light.
Okay, well, we might leave it there for today, but thanks, Krishna. It's been really interesting hearing about parenting and your diagnosis story and over-empathy and all of that kind of stuff. So I hope you've enjoyed this interview, and there'll be more ASPE interviews coming throughout the year. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you later. Okay, bye. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for weekly content just like this one. If you'd like to get even more involved, you can join the discussion on social media or support me by becoming a patron. Finally, I value your time, and you'll notice all my videos are ad-free, so please help me to cover what you want to hear by leaving me a comment and telling me what you think. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you another time.